Sunday night. Dean Legge from Dog Post talking about the Georgia Bulldogs. I will be monitoring the NBA playoffs, like most of y'all will as well. And was traveling so much this past week that there was just really, it made it very difficult to do the chat, so I did not do it. And I'll try and do it on Sunday night. Dog Post, I have covered the Georgia Bulldogs for getting close to 20 years now. It's 18 years, and this past week went around the state talking with younger kids who are, deciding what they're going to do. Also went to go see a couple kids who are committed to Georgia. Nazir Stackhouse, who really played well against Grayson, as well as the guy in Lithonia whose name has suddenly escaped me, as well as a lot of other kids. And we saw a lot of kids at Stevenson who are younger, saw some kids at Milton, saw some kids at Centennial, that wide receiver who is a special gifted player. We're going to have a lot about that in what we're hearing coming up. If you're not a member of Dog Post, you go to dogpost.com, dawgpost.com. This month you can be a member for $1 for a month. So go ahead and sign up. If you're a member right now, I appreciate you. If you have a membership to Dog Post and you're still over on Scout, or you have an annual subscription and your annual subscription doesn't run out until November or July or whenever, you need to contact me, dean@dogpost.com. You are entitled to the subscription that you got, and all you have to do is contact me and I will get that right. So Dog Post has moved, as you may be able to tell, to a much better platform. We're extremely excited. Okay, so again, we've got about 100 and something days. Tomorrow, Kirby will talk to the media in Columbus, as well as to a lot of people who will be at the Columbus Bulldog Club meeting. And then on Tuesday, he will be in Savannah. Along both times, Tom Crean will be there. I'll be at the Savannah meeting. I'm not going to crisscross the state. I'm only going to go south. I was just in Savannah not so long ago because of the traveling. So a lot of stuff. Saw the kid from Brunswick play, the offensive lineman, this weekend too. So everybody who's here, I appreciate it. Again, we've been having about 4,000 people for these Sunday night chats, which is quite a bit of an audience in May. Okay. Quite a bit of an audience. I appreciate all of y'all. Again, I'm watching the Warriors and the Rockets and the Warriors, and I'm on a delay. The Rockets better understand that you're actually going to have to run a little bit of offense in order to win this series. I don't see it, but we'll see. And Kevin Durant doesn't make things any easier on anybody either. Okay, so Georgia, the curious thing about it is you got Jake Fromm this week throwing a fishing hook into his leg, which is not a big deal, but it just proves and shows that even high-level Division I athletes can do stuff that's really kind of dumb sometimes. The only thing that would be bad there is if it were to get infected or anything like that. I really have a hard time believing that will be the case for Jake. And, just gotta kind of, he's supposed to, I see his Instagram all the time. He's a pretty good fisherman. Or at least it appears that he catches a lot of fish. And, I don't know how you wound up. I don't fish. I don't hunt. I don't fish. I don't have time. But I don't know how you do that. Someone's asking me what's over my left shoulder. This is my left shoulder. My cousin, who I went to high school with, she bought me this this thing. My father and mother, when I don't know how old I was. We lived in Tucker, so I had to have been at least in 4th grade or older. And Santa Claus bought me the larger version of this, and it's one of these electronic deals. I'm surprised the sound is still working, quite frankly. It looks like someone's winning 10-1 though right now. We're going to turn that off. Any nuggets? Nuggets will be on what we're hearing tomorrow at Dog Post. A lot of nuggets, not a ton of massive. Yeah, I never have fished because I don't enjoy being bored out of my skull. I grew up in the suburbs. All right, we played sports and we avoided getting hit in traffic basically when we were playing sports. There were lakes where I grew up, I guess, but in my mother's side of the family is from a very, very rural part of Georgia, but we didn't go fishing and we didn't go hunting, and that's fine with me. You know, all y'all that go do that, that's good, that's great, but fishing in particular, I mean, I've been fishing a few times, once in Montana, once in South Carolina. I'm sure I've been in Georgia too, but it's just not for me. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And I'm not making fun of y'all fishing, but it is, I mean, there is some bizarreness that a guy can throw, can throw, well enough to lead a team to a national championship game and only accomplish something that's happened only 13 times in a school's history. And he managed to stick a hook in his leg. I mean, to go to the hospital? No, I don't hear about that a lot, quite frankly. I was going to share this later though, but I remember about this time, maybe a little bit earlier in the year, when Aaron Murray was going into his junior or sophomore year, whichever it is, he damn near broke his foot playing soccer. I still got an image of the foot. I mean, it looks bad, but we never published it because, you know, it was obvious it was Aaron. You could make certain that it was Aaron, but it's amazing what some of these quarterbacks do in the offseason. Matthew Stafford and Joe Cox, Aaron Murray. Now all of a sudden you've got Jake Fromm throwing fishing hooks into his leg. It happens. Who hurt their leg falling down stairs? That's a good question. You know, in all honesty, the four-wheelers are what's so dangerous. I mean, you know, I hardly hear anybody saying something good about a four-wheeler. There's so many accidents and so many, you know, when that happened, that's serious, man. I mean, you can get thrown off. That's not at all like, you know, fishing. And I'm assuming from a lot of these images are of him on the water. I don't know where he's. It seems like he's in a boat in some of them. I don't know. I don't really pay a lot of attention to it, but let's see. Can you predict Georgia's record? I'm actually going to do something about that this week against the spread on dawgpost.com, dawgpost.com. I appreciate everybody joining. We're only about 10 minutes in here right now, but about 4,000 people or so, usually more than that, have been joining us on these Sunday night chats. I apologize for last week, but sometimes I have to travel in order to, you know, do the job. At least he's not out partying like others. All I would say to that is I would not make assumptions about any of these players partying or not partying, and I'll leave it there. This week, I don't know about predicting the record, but I want to talk about against the spread for the Dogs. So that will be, you know, the interesting thing on some of those. We've got a member of our site who is very into gambling. I don't gamble on sports, and although you could now, that's going to be an interesting thing too. Is where is the NCAA going to draw a line here? I mean, can you in Kentucky, in the state of Kentucky, in Louisville, where one of their member institutions is, you can legally bet at a sporting event. Is that ever going to happen at a college facility, for instance, at UNLV or, you know, at Rutgers? So that will be something to watch. I know I'll be watching that. I find it impossible to believe that there will ever be betting windows at the University of Georgia. But in downtown Athens, that totally could happen. I mean, if you think about it, if betting is going to become legal and the state of Georgia, does it, because the state of Georgia has with the exception of hockey, they have every single major sport. And some people would say hockey's not a major sport, but whatever. You've got Major League Soccer, football, NBA, barely the NBA with the Hawks. The Braves, obviously you've got Georgia Tech and Georgia, and now Georgia State and Georgia Southern. You've got NASCAR at the track in Atlanta. It would be curious. I wonder how many of y'all would actually place bets. I bet a bunch of you degenerates would place bets on Georgia. I would tell you to stay away from betting on stuff that you are emotionally involved with. That's a real not a good thing, I would say. Here's a question about if I went to Georgia. I played basketball and tennis undergraduate at Coker College, which is a Division II school. And then I have a master's degree from University of Georgia in public administration. So I went to Georgia for grad school from 1999 to 2001, the transition from Jim Donnan to Mark Richt. I've been covering Georgia since 2001, and so this is the 18th season that Dog Post has covered Georgia. I covered it a little bit before that. Here's a question about Stetson Bennett. Have you heard anything about Stetson Bennett's intent to transfer? I actually talk about that in what we were hearing. I don't want to give away something that will be written. I'm not quite done with it. Of course, I'm not quite done with it. I'm never quite done with anything. It seems like I got to do a better job of that. But I don't know what will happen. I will lay that out better in what we were hearing. I think that I'll put it this way though. Stetson Bennett would start at a lot of places, and he's the number 3 quarterback at Georgia. He's not on scholarship. So if he were on scholarship, I think it would be a curious discussion as to would he leave. But he's not on scholarship. So, I just find it hard to believe he would ever get past anybody. And so they've got to take that into consideration, the Bennett household, I guess you could say. That's quite a name, by the way. It sounds like he's a Supreme Court judge. Are they jurists? Any attorneys on here that can say that? Are you a journalist or something? Yes, I am. I have been for some time. Bennett would not start for a lot of schools. Well, a lot of people would disagree with you. Justice, Supreme Court Justice, thank you. Good Lord. Having one of those days. We went, let's see, last week Dylan was in Miami. Matt and I were all over South Georgia, at Metropolitan Atlanta, checking in on guys. People were still asking about Owen Popo. Could he flip to Georgia? I'm sure he could. I right now have to say about Owen Popo, my guess is that right now he can always flip. That can always happen. It's a long time, But right now, I don't know why anybody would expect him to flip as it stands today. And this is not me rambling about Owen Popo, a kid I've never met, and I have no issues or criticisms of Owen or anything. Well, this is the next thing, slight criticism. I would like to see, and this happened with Blaylock as well. I would like to see guys play in the spring. I think even if you're as high a level player as Owen and Blaylock are, I would still like to see you play, even if it's only for a quarter, which would be maybe 4 series. That would be nice. And I know from some of the grumbling, whatever you want to call it, from the college coaches who are around, they would have liked to see it too. Now, they get it. You don't want to injure guys in games that don't matter. But it would have been nice to see those guys play. Do you know how Zamir's recovery is going, and if he possibly start early in the season? so I was, here's a Tresman Marshall thing about him going to Auburn this weekend. From what I understand, I did not go to his game. He was he played Friday night, so at Clinch. So if he went to Auburn, it would have been over the weekend. But the long story short with any of these kids is it's just such a long time between now and December even. So about 6 months between now and when they would actually sign. And I don't see any reason to get majorly concerned about any one commit. I think if there's 6 guys that are, wishy-washy or whatever, so be it. But, why are people that are Georgia fans worked up in any way about Auburn? I mean, Georgia has whipped their ass more than any rival program in the last 15 years. And frankly, even if they hadn't, one player, Owen or Derek Brown or whoever, is not going to make a program. And so if Tresman Marshall, that's the first I've seen about that. So it's totally could be, I'm not refuting it by any stretch, but you can't, I mean, this time last year, Adam Anderson was committed to LSU. The whole list of kids were committed to LSU, Tennessee, Alabama. I mean, you can't know right now. And this is just a different time. And there were guys committed to Georgia this time last year in this class who are not around anymore. So it happens. But the up and down is what Matt DeBerry covers every day. And Georgia had a bunch of kids in this weekend. If you haven't read that, then go ahead and do so. South Georgia or Southwest Georgia guys, anybody a little bit close to I-75 and over, they're always going to be targets for Auburn, to some degree Clemson, but certainly for Auburn because it's close. It's not that far away. And Clinch it's not super close to Auburn, but it's not far away either. Neither is Florida State, really. But, Georgia's just going to have to recruit the kids, and that's just all there is to it. But, if guys decommit, they decommit. I think that right now, did you think this time last year that Georgia would sign Adam Anderson, Brent Cox, and Tyndall? Well, I don't think I did. I mean, I think they could. I knew they could recover with Adam Anderson and Brent Cox. In fact, it was odd that Brent Cox picked Ohio State to me at the time, but it happens. I think Owen's situation was a little bit different. He was more towards Auburn than people either knew or cared to admit, and that happens too. By the way, I mean, these kids don't owe reporters anything; they can say whatever they want to say. There were some kids that I cover who felt like that Owen Popo would go to Georgia, but they didn't go to the same school. They didn't necessarily know, so it happens. Yes, back to the Zamir recovery. Sometimes I should not read what's on the screen and just talk, because I've been told that many times I get sidetracked. I don't totally know what's going on with Zamir right now. He's back at Laurinburg. And I have a very high opinion of him. He's the best high school football player that I have seen live. So it's just me. I didn't see Matthew Stafford play live. I didn't see Todd Gurley play live. But I saw AJ Green. I saw Aaron Murray. I saw Eric Berry. I saw plenty of very good players. Deshaun Watson live. Jarvis Jones. Good players. None of them were as good in high school as Zamir was the time I saw him play. In terms of the recovery, Kirby said in the spring to us, and this is the last time, maybe he'll update everyone tomorrow. He said the last time he spoke about Zamir, and Zamir practiced a fair amount. He just didn't get tackled, I don't think. I'm fairly certain he didn't get tackled. But I saw, he did plenty of drills and so forth. But so Zamir is on the way back. But people shouldn't get so, excited. I think he'll play, obviously, in the fall. How quick, I don't know. A lot of people are saying his recovery early on is better than anyone they've ever seen. I can't say that. That would not surprise me. Is James Cook being overlooked? Yeah, he is. But Zamir is just really, really good. And that's just Zamir before he got hurt. We don't know what it's going to look like after he got hurt. We don't know. We don't know what will look like. DeAndre Swift's pretty good too. And so I saw him play live, believe it or not, amazingly. But I really, 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 really like Zamir. Again, he is a very, very good player. But he just dealt with an ACL, which is a very serious injury. Trey Sanders questions over and over again. If I'm ignoring the question, it usually means I don't know the answer or it's a crazy question. That's not a crazy question. I don't know the answer. Is the V. Wilson injury a big concern to you? It was a big concern to Kirby Smart that day. I know that. And it hurts him. That means that some of the... Well, I mean, to some degree, with Gibbs enrolling back at Georgia... that's something to keep an eye on. If D'Angelo comes back, which I'm assuming now he will, assuming we can't, I mean, that's been quite a ordeal. If he comes back, then that takes some pressure off, but the kid from American Plantation helps. And they've got some guys in the secondary. I mean, first of all, 2 of their 4 secondary kids, they come back. But, it really is getting to the point, I hate this phrase, but it really is getting to the point that it is becoming next man up at Georgia. There's positions where you don't want to lose players, obviously. I don't think anyone would want Jake Fromm to get hurt and then have to go to Justin Fields, but no one wanted that last year. Now, Fromm is more prepared for what is going to happen. Justin Fields has more developing to do. I think and so does Jake Fromm, but Jake Fromm's development there's spectrums all the time, and Justin Fields' spectrum is more broad than than Jake Fromm's is. So it's going to take him time to get there. Quarterback is a funny spot all the time, and Jacob Eason, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Murray, 2 of those 3 were true freshmen, and they basically had very difficult freshman years. Aaron Murray had a very difficult freshman year. Jake Fromm wasn't asked to do as much as a lot of those guys were, and so that's one thing to keep in mind. But by the end of the season, he was asked to do more, and I think he really played well by the end of the year. I mean, after the game with the Gators, everything sort of changed. It seemed like they asked him to do more. I know Mary redshirted. I just said that. Taz, why aren't you on the site, man? What's going on? Have you been over there yet? I'm waiting for your answer, by the way. I may have missed if you've jumped on over there. Why aren't you there? That's my question. But yeah, I mean, just generally speaking, freshmen in general, I remember being a freshman athlete in college. You're a disaster. You cannot do anything. You can barely wash clothes. Or as my girlfriend in college would call it, wash clothes. Yes, this is every Sunday unless I'm traveling. We do this around between 8:45 and 9:15, but I'm trying to do it earlier and earlier because I'd like to have a life and not locked up in this makeshift studio. So yes, we do it about this time. In the fall, I go for longer than I do in the off season. But yeah, let me just say this. I do think that Georgia will win the East. They're going to be, it looks like, double-digit favorites basically over everybody in the East. It looks like they will be slightly favored LSU, if you believe our degenerate gambler who is on board at Dog Post right now. I think they should be favored against LSU as well, even though it's on the road. The last time they played LSU, that game was a toss-up. It was an even game, it was a pick-em. So being favored in any way on the road in this conference, and really any sport, means the road team is better, should win, is better. But you can't discount reality, which is the snap count. I mean, snap count matters. If you look at the difference between the 2013 Clemson game and the 2014 Clemson game, Clemson had a snap count advantage and 13 and won by a field goal. They didn't have it the next year, and the game was lopsided. And South Carolina on the road. What about South Carolina in that same season in 14? What about South Carolina on the road and Missouri? What do you think the line will be? They'll be favored. I'm not sure how much they'll be favored by in some of these games. Now, I was told that they would be a double-digit favorite in every single Eastern game. We will actually see if that's the case over time. And here's a discussion about South Carolina. We had a very long discussion on Dog Post the other day about South Carolina, at South Carolina. And I know South Carolina well. It's always a tough game in Columbia. They hate Clemson number 1. They hate Georgia number 2. And Will has done a very, very good job, I think, at South Carolina. It's just that, the team that Carolina really hates the most has competed in a way that South Carolina right now is not capable of. But they get Georgia and Clemson at home this year, if I'm not mistaken. I know they get Georgia at home. So, Carolina will be a tough game. Georgia should win it, though. Do Mark Rick's Canes have a chance against LSU and Arlington? Everybody has a chance against LSU because they are a disaster in many ways. They do not play to their potential, and that's been the case for some time now. Ed Orgeron does not give me a bunch of confidence that they will play anywhere close to their potential. I don't know that they could beat everyone. They can beat almost everyone. They probably could beat everyone they play. But they could lose to a lot of teams too, and they showed that last year. They showed that with their loss to Troy. You can't lose to Troy if you're. I know, by the way, Troy's got guys just because of their situation. They're in Alabama and all this stuff, but LSU should never. LSU should barely lose to Ole Miss, and that has happened a lot. Here's a question about future scheduling. I actually had some discussion about this. I'll talk about this, even though some of it will be in what we're hearing, not a lot. Does Clemson have a free pass to the playoff? Well, they actually have to roll the ball out there. I don't know how many challenging games they've got. They got to play at Texas A&M. I don't think A&M's very good. In terms of very good yet, they could be surprising. Jimbo has had a couple of teams, but they really needed a quarterback. You always got to have a quarterback. And does Clemson have one right now? Clemson fans are split on their quarterback situation. They're ready to move to Trevor. Trevor Lawrence gets out there. Trevor Lawrence gets out there and they don't ask him to do anything. That's one thing. Trevor Lawrence gets out there and they ask him to do some stuff. They're going to have some interceptions and they're going to lose some games. They lose games anyway that they shouldn't lose. But in terms of future scheduling for Georgia, we're just going to see. I'm not sold. I am skeptical that Georgia and Clemson, speaking of which, will be. I am a little skeptical that Georgia and Clemson will line up a home and home here in the near future because the dates don't really match up right, and I'm skeptical that they will move UAB and whoever to make it happen. Now, the other complicated thing here that Clemson is just now getting in the mess of is they've got to deal with Notre Dame because of their agreement with the ACC. So what used to be easy for Clemson, or easier, I guess you could say, because Clemson is somewhat in the same ballpark as Georgia. They've got an in-state, out-of-conference rival to end the season, just like Georgia. So that eats up a home game every other year. Now they've got to deal with Notre Dame. So because of that, I am skeptical that Georgia and Clemson will play a home and home soon. I'm skeptical. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm certainly not saying it will. Now, in 2024, I could totally see Georgia playing Clemson at the Dome. That makes plenty of sense if Clemson wants to do it. Georgia playing at the Dome in 2024, I'm pretty sure that will happen. They've been doing it every 4 years, so that Georgia will play there seems pretty obvious. Who they will play, I don't know. And Gary Stokan and those guys at the Chick-fil-A was the Peach Bowl? I don't know what their official name is. That they have done a good job of keeping Georgia rotated in that game, and they're quiet about who's going there and playing. Now, you could have a couple of different games, like, when Georgia plays Virginia, that's a Monday night game. I'm glad about that. Here's Paul Beeson with more criticism of playing Clemson. And I get it. I mean, like, I think Clemson Georgia going to play in a game, a bowl game. I mean, Orange Bowl or a playoff or something like that. It's kind of be one of these things where I don't know how they've avoided one another in the last 10 years in a bowl, and then I don't even think they've ever played a bowl game against one another. Now, for a long time, it's because they played in regular season against one another, but now there's kind of no in modern SEC, 1992 on, they've only played in the regular season four times, 94, 95, 6 times, and Georgia's 5-1 in those games, but they have not played in a bowl game. Now, that's hard to believe, but so many of the bowl matches for so long were so bad. I mean, they're just bad. Bad matchups, playing Wisconsin or whoever, just not good teams or nothing sexy. And someone was asking about when is Georgia going to play Virginia Tech or Miami in the Dome, and that could happen in 24 too. Clemson, for all Dabo's jibber-jabber about wanting to play Georgia every year, there's no way he really wants to play Georgia every year. I mean, he's not a psychopath. So none of these coaches, they can say whatever they want to say. If you, let's just say they split the games, that would basically knock Clemson out of the national championship hunt every half a decade. So, and that's if they split them, and Georgia hasn't exactly split with Clemson through the years. So, I am curious to see. Notre Dame throws a big wrench into Clemson's plans for sure. But if I were Clemson, I'd be happy about it. I mean, that means you get to play Notre Dame a lot, and that's a good thing. For Clemson has starved to play some legit teams. They have had a hard time pre this decade playing team. I mean, they played Alabama in the Dome. They played Texas A&M. But like to consistently play Clemson, they probably are really happy to play Notre Dame. I think they're probably very happy about that. If you're Georgia, do you really want to add someone to make the schedule that much more difficult every single year? I mean, I think it's okay to play Virginia. I think it's okay to play, UCLA or whoever. I don't think you got to play the equivalent of the late 90s Nebraska Cornhuskers. I mean, you got to be realistic. These kids, it's hard to play these games. Every single season ain't going to be Georgia just plowing through people. You have to do what you need to do to get to the championship game, and that doesn't always involve playing the most challenging schedule possible. Georgia is always going to play Georgia Tech. That's never going to change. They've been playing for 100+ years. They're never not going to play Auburn. They've been playing for longer than that. So there's just those two and the Gators. That will never change. Georgia has 3 major rivals. You cannot play. I get that everybody wants to be a hero and all this stuff. But what if you're not good and you just are getting embarrassed on national TV or not even national TV in some of these games? So you can't play everybody. I know that right now Clemson is a marquee name. Georgia is always going to have, people who won't, want to play them. There was a time when I thought Georgia should have gotten more sexy with their schedule, but it doesn't. They should never be. I mean, I don't think they should have ever played at Colorado. That was crazy. I don't think they should have ever played at Oklahoma State. I don't think they should have ever played at Arizona State. None of those games made any sense. They just didn't. They lost 2 of them. One of them, they should have no business losing, and they lost. So you got, use Atlanta. You can play at home. You could play in Orlando. You could play in Atlanta. I guess you could play in Charlotte, although I really doubt that. Just play your games. Georgia was the number 2 viewed television team of this this past season. Number 2. Even if you take away the national championship game, they were more viewed than almost anybody else. The Rose Bowl was more viewed than the primetime Sugar Bowl with Alabama in it. So, Georgia doesn't have a problem with exposure. They just have to win they just have to win the East and then win the game to win the conference, and then they go to the championship game. I think it's awesome that everybody wants to play Oregon and Ohio State and whoever else. I got to pay to go out there and cover these games. I'm not so pumped up about it. I think that you always have to go. You always have to go to play in Florida every single year. That's a trip. And then, like years like this year, you're playing at LSU. So, I don't know. Missouri, if you want to blame anybody on this, you can. Missouri coming in the league, that means you're playing Alabama and LSU twice every 14 years or something like that? Once every 7 years? It's terrible. All right, last question. How soon till you can place bets on the Dogs in Athens? That is a state legislature question. That's a good question. I think the state of Georgia, which is obviously relatively conservative, should very seriously consider what their options are. I don't think that they have to do anything, but I think that they should consider their options. All right, seriously, last one. And Instagram, I'm sorry, sometimes y'all are sideways because I can't, just because of the way the cameras are set up. What are my thoughts on a 9-game SEC schedule? I would not do it. I don't think there's anyone in the league except Nick who wants to do it. And the TV partners, I'm sure, would love to do it. But if you do that, now that's going to be it for. Georgia's not going to play 11 legitimate games, so that's going to be it for the these Clemson and Georgia. It'd die with a 9-game schedule. ACC's not doing it either, and I don't really know how you could. All right, join me next week here at Dog Post. Go to Dog Post right now, dawgpost.com, and sign up. It's $1 right now. You have no excuse not to take a chance on this. So here's Taz, who is actually involved a little bit in the state legislature, by the way. He says the earliest would be 2020, and his thing went away. They're never not going to play Georgia Tech. It's just not going to happen. The legislature would. I don't know if there is I'm not aware that currently the legislature is making them play one another, but it wouldn't surprise me. It would not surprise me. So, anyway, I don't see it. Join me next week here on Dog Post. Go to Dog Post right now, dawgpost.com. Sign up, $1. It's the best dollar you spend all day, trust me.